Hey friends, welcome once again to the Undiscovered Games video podcast, where we take a look at the lesser known board games of the world and share those with you. For episode 19, let's take a little break and talk about some more laid back board games that you probably missed. I know I missed some of these until fairly recently, and I want to make sure you don't miss them either. If you follow my Instagram page or this YouTube channel right here, you know I typically like a good heavy Euro, lots of player interaction, lots of crunchy decisions, and just really going at each other the whole game. These games today are going to be a little more feel good, a little more chilled out, and just easier on the brain. These are great for parents and grandparents, maybe your kids or some non-gaming friends if you want to have like a more casual game night and you don't want to throw anything too crazy at them. All the games today are going to have super easy rules. You know, the themes are going to be a little more lighthearted. It's not going to be too cutthroat or interactive. You can kind of focus on your own goals without worrying too much about your opponents. There might be a little bit of player interaction, but nothing too crazy, nothing too brain burning, and certainly nothing that's going to create any enemies at the table. It's also worth noting I'm not including any two-player only games. I like to save those for other videos. All the games today are for 2 to 4 players, and they play equally well at all those player counts. So let's take a look at 4 random laid-back board games from my collection that you probably missed. Starting out is Life of a Chameleon, which was released in 2021 by Last Night Games. In this game, you play the role of a chameleon, trying to strategically move around the board and change colors to avoid snakes and eat as many bugs as you can. The game has these beautiful wooden components and looks awesome on the table. Each player controls a chameleon, and the chameleons are all different colors. The colors are important because when you move around the board, you need to blend in to avoid the snake predators, and also so the bugs don't see you coming. Because if your chameleon matches the color of the bugs, you get to eat them for potential points. And if you can match the color of the snakes, then you're allowed to share a space with the snakes because they don't see you there. If you don't match the bugs, they scatter to an adjacent space. So every time you move onto a space where there's a bug that doesn't match you, you get to pick the adjacent space where the bug scatters. And this is important because if you scatter it to an opponent's chameleon, they get to eat it right away if it matches one of their colors. Additionally, there are some special requirement cards that might say something like this. If you are adjacent to a purple, a green, and a yellow bug, then you can cash that card in for 3 points. So you might want to scatter those bugs strategically. Ultimately, you're trying to fill up these red objective cards with the bugs you've eaten, the cubes, and you have to add the bugs in order as they appear on the card. So you can start at the right or the left. It's just wherever you start, once you commit, then you have to go in order across the card. Also, you can store up to 5 cubes in your reserve, and at any time during the game, you can cash in 2 cubes of the same color for a cube of a different color. So I could cash these 2 red in for a purple and put it right on my objective card. If I don't complete the objective card by the end of the game, it's worth -2 points, but if I complete it, it's worth the 5 points showing at the top there. And there's cards that are worth all different amounts. On your turn, you get 3 actions. You can do the same action multiple times. Your choices are move your chameleon, change colors of your chameleon. You can also move a snake, or you can just wait for bugs by rolling this 20-sided die here. So if you move your chameleon, it's just 1 action point per space you move. So that would be 1 action and then another action to move it again. You are allowed to share spaces with your opponents, but you can never share a space with a snake unless it matches one of your colors. So this one could not move up to the orange snake, but it could move through this blue and purple snake because the chameleon is blue and purple. Another action is changing colors. So I could take any one of these 3 face-up chameleon cards or the top card from the face-down deck. And if I want to change colors, I just select one, and then I simply swap my chameleon with the one from the supply. So if I want to become the blue chameleon, I trade out the one I was before and find the blue one from the supply. There's a wooden chameleon for every color combination on those cards. It's really cool. So now my chameleon can eat blue bugs instead of red and green bugs. And you notice some of the chameleons are 2 colors, which gives you more flexibility with the snakes and with the bugs. You should probably try to choose those multicolored chameleons when possible, but I was just trying to show you the example there. Another option is just moving a snake. The snakes use a leapfrog idea, so you can move it one space adjacent, but it will leap over any other snakes for one action. So I could move that red one up there all the way down here for one action. Now, usually you're just trying to move these out of your way, but you can trap your opponents a little bit. There can be a little bit of meanness there, but it's usually not too bad. The last thing you can do is just wait for bugs to show up. And the way this works is you choose a color and then you roll this 20-sided die. And whichever number shows up, that's where the color goes, but you have to name your color ahead of time. So if I would have said blue and then rolled that, that would have shown up on the 8. The fun thing is you get to do this 3 times for one action. So I get to name another color and roll again, and that color will show up on the new number. So chances are you're going to get a color that you want somewhat close to you based on the way the board is set up and because you get to roll 3 times. And don't forget, you got to scatter the bugs if they land on any chameleons that don't match the colors. So there's a lot of little neat, subtle nuances here regarding the movement rules, the scattering rules, pushing your luck for more bugs to come out and things like that. Like if I was this blue-purple chameleon and I moved up here, these bugs would scatter adjacent, and then I could move again to immediately eat the blue and the purple bug because they match both of my colors. Eating the bugs is not an action. You get that automatically. You can either take a new card whenever you eat bugs, or you can add them to a card you've already started. But again, you have to start on the end and work toward the other side of the card. So here I would have to have an orange next, and I don't. So these would have to go into my reserve, or I could start a new card, risking, not completing it by the end of the game. And up here, there are 2 cards that both start with violet and blue. And you see there, they have the letters written on there in case you're colorblind, so that's very helpful. So I could take that card and immediately put the violet and then the blue. So I'm working right to left on that card. Every time you take a new card, you have to draw a card from this bonus deck. And there's all sorts of fun cards in this deck. Like this one here says, if you're on the same space as the blue snake, you get to play this card for 2 points. So like a later turn, I could move my chameleon down to where the blue snake is and play that card. Obviously, those green bugs would have to scatter, but then I'd play that for 2 points. So there's a lot of little objective cards in here. I showed you some of these before, like if you're adjacent to these specific color bugs, you can cash this card in for 3 points. You can play as many cards on your turn as you want. The sneak card lets you share the space of a snake that doesn't match your color. So I could move here onto the red even though I don't match, and then collect a bug and scatter those other bugs, or however you want to play these cards. There's just a lot of fun ideas in here. And what I find interesting is whenever you take a new red card, you also get a blue card. And when you complete a red card, you get a blue card as well. So the game sort of tempts you to take on more of those red cards, even though if you don't complete them, you're going to lose 2 points per card. So there's a little risk reward there. And I really like that rule of getting those bonus cards every time you take a new red card. Let's look at one more sample turn here. If I'm the red-orange chameleon there, I could move one space for my first action, scatter that yellow bug, and immediately get to eat the red and the orange bug. Now I can either take one of these cards and start it right away, or I can add them to my supply here or to one of my previous cards. For my second action, I'm going to change colors. So I take this card, I become the red-yellow chameleon. So it's a very thematic game as well. Move for my last action, immediately get the red and the yellow cubes, and once again decide if I want to start a new card or not. There is a yellow-red card up here that starts with yellow and red, so I'm going to take that card, add the yellow and the red cube to it, and then I would also get one of those blue bonus cards because I took a new red card. But again, I'm risking, not finishing those cards. The progress of the game is tracked with this triangle die here. You just roll that and move this tracker up to the 20 or the 16 in a 2-player game, and that will determine when the game ends. That's my only minor complaint with this game, is the end is a little bit random, so you can't always prepare for that. But this is an easy easy 8.5 out of 10 for me. I mean, the production is through the roof. Every piece in this game is, painted on both sides and engraved. You have these beautiful dice and cards and game board. The board is even double-sided. If you don't want all these colors, you can flip it over for a little bit simpler look. This game just really continues to impress me every time we play it. Well-deserved winner of the 2022 Mensa Select Award, and I just want to make sure you don't miss out on this one, especially if you want something a little more laid back, something with a really fun theme that everybody can get behind, and the theme really helps you remember the rules in this game. So if that looks like something you might enjoy, make sure to check out Life of a Chameleon. Next up on my list is a game called Jubako, another red box, coincidentally. This is by the great design duo Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. They've put out some awesome games over the years, but I didn't hear much about this one. It's definitely a lighter game, more of a filler game, mostly multiplayer solitaire, but the simplicity is what I love. In Jubako, players compete to assemble the best bento box. It uses these domino-style pieces with different ingredients on them, things like tobiko or broccoli, squid, tuna, avocado, all these ingredients you might find in a bento box. Your turn is very simple. You draw a tile and place a tile. Each player keeps a hand of 2 tiles, and then there's always 4 face-up tiles in the center of the table. On your turn, you draw 1 face-up tile, or you can draw a face-down tile from one of the stacks. You add this to your hand, so now you have 3 tiles, and then you play one of those into your bento box. When you place a tile, you can either cover up a matching ingredient below it or place on these empty black squares, but those go very quickly at the beginning of the game, so most of the time you're going to be trying to match ingredients. As soon as you place a tile, you get to score 1 of the symbols on it by counting all visible symbols. So here, egg would only score me 1, but broccoli would score me 3. So obviously I would choose the broccoli in this case. Now, when you place a tile and you cover up a symbol, you're only required to cover 1 of the 2 symbols. However, if you can cover up both symbols, you'll get bonus points, and this is my favorite part of the game. If you can plan your tiles out accordingly, you can come in on a later turn with a matching tile to stack on top. You match both of those symbols, you'll get 5 bonus points. So in this example, I would get my regular 3 points for the purple symbol showing there, and then I get to add 5 points because I matched both symbols. Again, you don't have to match both symbols, but that's how you get the 5 points. And it's interesting because, there's no 2 tiles in the game that are the same. So the only way you can get that matching bonus is basically taking 3 turns. You place 1 tile here, place another tile next to it, and then you take a 3rd turn to place that matching tile on top. Since you always have that hand of 2 tiles, plus those 4 face-up tiles in the center, you can really do some long-term strategizing here and plan out some big turns ahead of time. But it's a lot trickier than it seems at first, especially with the 3D element. When you stack these tiles, you cannot span 2 different levels of the bento box like this. You would have to be stacking them up so the tiles always stay level. So there's this neat 3D element to the game. You're planning out your bento box horizontally and vertically. So it's a neat little twist on these area building types of games that we see so often in board gaming. This game's very unique. I find it very pleasant to play. As puzzly as this is, it's pleasant because of the scoring system. It's just 1 point per visible symbol every time you place that tile, and then the 5-point bonus if you can make that happen. So you're not racking your brain trying to remember how it scores. It's more like just putting together a fun and engaging puzzle. I really enjoy this game. There's even some advanced variants in the rulebook. There are several of these if you want to make a more complex game. Things like, getting points for stacking certain heights or having certain ingredients showing at the end of the game and things like that. We typically just play with the base game because I think it's good enough as it is. I mean, this is a light filler game. It's just like a little puzzle that you're doing. It takes 15 to 20 minutes, and you really can't go wrong with this game. I've shown it to all types of gamers, and, it just hits on all cylinders for people because it's so simple to grasp. The long-term planning in this is really rewarding too, because you're trying to line up those tiles for those matching bonuses, but as more tiles come out, you're tempted with these new pursuits, and then you're like, oh, should I abandon this route, maybe wait till later till I have more of these symbols showing, or should I just take the 5-point bonus now while I can? So there's a lot of little subtle things that come through in this game, which is cool because it's one of those games where you see it and it's like, that's all there is to it, really? But when you play it, you see that it is quite interesting and enjoyable. So that's Jubako. I will say the box is a little too big for what the game is. I wish it wasn't such a shelf hog. And then these tiles are a little bit fiddly because they're just really lightweight. I wish they were a little heavier or maybe rubberized on the bottom or something so they didn't slide around so easily. But even with those minor complaints, this is a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Check out Jubako. I highly recommend it, especially if you love Japanese food like my wife and I do. That's another reason we really like this game, because of the theme. But before I make myself too hungry, let's keep the list moving to another great laid-back game in my collection, and that is Keltis by the great Dr. Reiner Knizia. Had to put a Knizia game on my list, of course. Keltis actually won Game of the Year way back in 2008, but I never hear anyone talk about this game anymore. But I do hear a lot of people talking about Lost Cities still, which is the card game for 2 players. Keltis was marketed in the United States as Lost Cities, the board game, which is for 2 to 4 players. So if you have Lost Cities, the board game, it's very similar to Keltis. I much prefer the look and vibe of Keltis overall, and there's even some slight rules changes that make me prefer Keltis as well. I like Keltis as more of an abstract theme. The Lost Cities theme has always felt a little tacked on to me. The game is just colors and numbers, and Keltis has this beautiful abstract game board, chunky wooden pieces, and just a chill vibe, and this is why it's a perfect laid-back game to feature on this list. In Keltis, players each get a hand of 8 cards. They're numbered 0 to 10 with different symbols corresponding to these tracks out here. So if you play a card with a yellow symbol, say, you move up 1 space on the yellow track. Play a pink card, move up 1 space on the pink track. The number is irrelevant to how many spaces you get to move. You always move up 1 space, but you have to play your cards in numerical order. You'll make a different column of cards for each color track, and then you can either start at a high number and work down lower, or you can start at a low number and work up higher. You just have to commit to one or the other, and once you commit, you're stuck doing that for the rest of the game. So you're always going to have this hand of 8 cards. You play a card or discard a card, and then draw back up to 8. If I play this 10, I get to move one of my pieces up on the corresponding color track, always 1 space up. That's my turn, and then I draw back up to 8 cards, and it's the next player's turn. Now on a future turn, if I want to add to that red column there, I could either play a 10, so I could match the number, or play lower than the 10, because 10 is the highest number, so I'd have to go in descending order with my numbers. I could play a 9, move up 1 more space. On a future turn, I could play a 9 or an 8 or a 7 or a 6. It doesn't matter as long as it keeps going in descending order numerically. You don't have to go 1 number at a time. I could skip down from a 9 to a 3 or something like that. Later, I could start a new color. So I could play a 7, go up 1 on the green track. My later card there could be an 8 or a 6 or even a 7. So you're always committing one way or the other. You move up, you're trying to get these bonus tiles. There's several types that are out there, and these tiles are going to be randomly placed at the start of every game, so the setup's always going to be a bit different. The gemstones out here refer to this chart. If you collect 0 or 1, you'll get negative points, but anything beyond that you collect will be worth points at the end. Those tiles go away as soon as you collect them, so there's a little bit of a race to get the gemstones. However, the other bonus tiles everyone can access. So as soon as you hit a point tile, you just track your score. And then these little yellow shamrock tiles are bonus movements. These are a lot of fun. If you land on one of those, that triggers a bonus move, and then you instantly get to move one of your pieces up 1 more space. I can move this one and trigger another bonus move. So you can create these little waterfall moments if you set it up just right. You're only allowed to have one pawn on each track, and once you commit to a track, you're stuck going up. You can never go back to 0. You want to get your pawns up as far as possible on every track. This big pawn here scores double, so wherever this ends up is going to get you double the points, good or bad. Let's say you ended up like this. These little spots here were 3 points each. This pawn is worth 7 times 2, so 14 points for the big pawn. However, if it's in the negative at -3, that would be -6 points. So you have to be careful which track you commit that pawn to. You want to make sure you have a lot of cards in a certain suit before you send him out on that path. So this game is all about commitment and timing. For example, let's say I really wanted to go get that gem, but all I had on the red track was a red 1. I could play it here legally. It is in descending order from the 9. So I could play that, move my white pawn up 1 space, and steal the gemstone. However, now my red column there is down to 1, so all I could play beyond that is a 1 and a 0. So you're kind of cutting yourself out of a future move to steal a gemstone now from your opponent. So from time to time, it can get a little bit cutthroat if you're racing to get those gemstones, but other than that, this is a very friendly game. There's a little more interaction once you start discarding cards as well. Let's say I already committed the 8 down there, so I have to go higher than an 8. And I have this pink 0. I can't play it here. I could just discard this to the face-up pink pile. Draw up to 8 cards, that's my turn. But now my opponents can draw the top face-up card or the face down from the stack. So when you discard a card, your opponent has a chance to get that. You got to be careful not to gift them the perfect card. So a little more player interaction once you start discarding cards. Other than that, though, you can share the same space out there and, there's no like blocking each other or anything. As soon as 5 pieces enter the area above that green line, the game will end, and then you score points based on where your pawns are. So again, your big pawn scores double those points, but you just add up your total. Any pawns left in the bottom are 0 points. If you commit them to a track, though, they could be worth negative points. So sometimes it makes sense to leave your pawn back at 0 unless you're really certain you can get up in the positive scoring there. It's a little bit of push your luck. You're going to get points based on your gemstones at the end, and then the most points wins. It's a very simple game to learn, but this is one that is always a hit every time we play it. It just feels laid back. It feels fun, feels friendly, and I'll say it once again, the aesthetics here are beautiful as far as my personal taste in board games. The color scheme, the wooden pieces, all of those things contribute to why this is such a cool game to me. This is a laid back game because of those things. Lost Cities doesn't feel as laid back because of the artwork, because of that theme of like going out and exploring. It's cool. But if somebody wanted to play Lost Cities, I would rather play 2-player Keltis. It's my favorite form of the Lost Cities line of games. That's just my personal preference. You can decide for yourself, but this is definitely a game to have in your collection in one way or another. For me, it's Keltis, and it's a 9 out of 10. That's an easy 9 out of 10 for me. My only negative is the luck of the draw. That can saddle you from time to time with, impossible decisions, wasted turns. But overall, this is a fun exercise in commitment and pacing and timing. Another classic from Reiner Knizia. Now let's keep the list moving with another laid-back game in my collection. The next game we're going to discuss is Animals on Board. And this was put out by Stronghold Games back in 2016, and this is marketed as a kids game that hobby gamers can enjoy, and it fits that description, but don't get too hung up on it being a kids game because this is a very addicting and fun game. The theme is that we are all building these arcs and we're trying to get animals on board our arcs. The problem is at the end of the game, if you're left with any pairs of the same animal, they're going to go see Noah's Ark. They would rather be over there with Noah, but the animals that you're left with, you get to score. So you want to end up with anything but pairs. So to do that, you're either going to split animals and take food, or you're going to take all the animals of one group onto your arc if you can feed them with your food. It's a very simple idea. This was designed by Wolfgang Sentker and Ralph Zerlind, who designed a very, very good game called Finca, which is kind of another hidden gem out there. Might do a video on that in the future. That one's not as laid back. So let me show you how this plays real quick, and then you might see why Animals on Board is one of my all-time favorite filler games. I love this game. So once everybody has their arc, you get one food. Each player starts with a food, and then each player draws 3 random animals from the stack, and you get to keep one on your arc. So you start with 1 animal on board already. These animals are always kept secret once they're on your arc. The other 2 that you don't select are going to go out into the middle of the table, and everybody's going to do this simultaneously. And then according to the rule book, so here we're playing a 4-player game, but depending on the number of players, you're going to put a certain number of animal tiles face up in the middle. So for a 4-player game, you have to have 12 total face-up animals and then 1 face-down animal. So we're going to bring this total up to 12 plus a random face-down one that nobody's going to know. Now each species is numbered 1 through 5, and there's only 1 of each number. So you can do a little bit of card counting here, but there's always this mystery tile kept face down, so you can never be too certain what's out there. Again, if you end up with any pairs on your arc, you're not going to be able to score them. So that mystery tile makes all the difference. On your turn, you have 2 options. You can only pick one. You can either split a group of animals into 2 groups, and if you do the split action, you take 1 food. That's how you get more food. Or you can take all animals of one group onto your boat as long as you have enough food to feed them. So each animal requires 1 food token. So starting out, I'm looking out here. I'm looking at my arc. I have a tiger already. So what kind of tigers? There's 1 tiger available. If I end with just 2 tigers on my arc, I don't get to score them. So there's a little risk there. Now, there could be a tiger in that mystery tile there. I don't know. So I'm just kind of feel it out a little bit, see what's out there, because we're going to have to do a split action to get some food built up. The first few turns of the game are usually just players collecting food, building up their food supply. Now it's nice because your food is limited to 5. You can only ever have a hand limit of 5 food. So if you ever want to do the split action beyond that, you actually have to pay food back to the supply. So it kind of, limits you. You can't just keep splitting and stocking up food, because food does carry over to the next round. So that does a nice job there of balancing that out. So let's say I split those into those 2 groups. I take 1 food, and that's my turn. Then it goes to the next player. Now they're going to have to split as well, because each group is, too big. They don't have enough food yet to feed a whole group. So they're deciding how they want to split these groups. Now you can't rearrange the animals once they're part of a group. So like if this player splits these 2 pandas off, they can't go add like the fox to the pandas then. They have to stay from the same group, splitting one group into 2 separate groups. And a single animal can be a group too. Like if you wanted to just split one animal off and take a food, you could do that as well. Now it's back to me. I have 2 food available. I can't feed a group of 3, but I can feed a group of 2 if I want to bring some animals on board. And it's all about deciding when the right moment is to collect animals. So let's say I do want to collect this group of 2 animals. I would pay 2 food and take them on board. Now, once I collect animals, I'm out of this round completely. So I won't get any more animals. Here I got a rhinoceros. I'm not going to be able to get those rhinos because I'm out of the round now. As soon as you bring animals on your boat, you put up your white flag, and that says you're out of this round. And then the round continues. Everybody gets a chance to bring animals on their boat. The last player can either choose to bring animals on or split and take food. So you stay in the round. There's a little bit of a game of chicken going on, a little bit of cat and mouse. You're trying to read your opponents, see, what animals they might be going for. It's also worth noting the first player to drop out of the round and put up their white flag is going to take the first player marker for the next round. So let's say all the players have done their actions and we're in a new round. Once again, in a 4-player game, we start the round with 12 face-up animals and 1 face-down animal, and that's different depending on the player count. So we just repeat that same process, either split animals and take a food, or take all animals from one group onto your boat as long as you can feed them. And you're just going to keep going around and around until one player gets their 10th animal. So let's fast forward. Let's say there's a group of 3 out there and I have 3 food to feed them. I'm going to pay my 3 food and bring these animals on board. Now the problem is I don't have room for all of these. This is going to be my 10th, 11th, and 12th animal, and that's fine, but this is going to trigger the end of the game. At this point, all players are going to get rid of any pairs of the same animals that they have on board. So I'm going to get rid of these here. These will not score. And I'm also going to get rid of the rhinos here. These will also not score because I have a pair of rhinos. That frees up some room, though, for those animals. So you can go over that 10. It's just, that's how you're going to do that if that happens. Now, I also have a pair of zebras here, so those are not going to score. So let's show you how the scoring does work. So first, you're going to group all your like animals together. So the alligators there form a herd, and the herd animals score 5 points each. You ignore the number, they all get 5, whereas the single animals just get the number showing on the tile. So you're definitely trying to get, 3, 4, or 5 of the same type of animal. That's going to maximize your scoring. But that's trickier than it sounds, because as soon as you start going for multiples, you risk ending with pairs. And that happens more than you might think because there's so many different animal species in this game. A lot of times it's hard to get that third animal of the same type, and then you're just stuck with all these pairs that don't score you anything. You have to remember every tile is valuable because you're only going to be scoring at most 10 tiles, and that's the player that runs out the game. So the other players a lot of times don't even have their arcs filled up yet. So you have to make sure you're not getting rid of a bunch of pairs at the end of the game. You need every tile you possibly can. The points are really tight in this game, so you really have to be able to read the table throughout the game and know when the right moment is to pounce and take what you can get. And that's what I love about this game. They can say it's a kid's game that hobby gamers can enjoy. I would say it's the other way around. It's a hobby game that kids can enjoy because of the artwork and the theme. But I'm telling you, there is a really, really good game in here. And my thinking is a lot of people maybe overlooked this because it looked more like a kid's game. But this is definitely not one to overlook. Definitely check this one out. I have this a 9 out of 10. It's everything I want in a filler game and then some. There is some tension throughout the game, but I still put it in my laid back category because the tension is very enjoyable. It's a good tension. It's not a stressful tension. It's not like a brain burning tension. It's just an enjoyable game. The tension comes from, reading the other players, trying to figure out which animals they're going for based on how they're splitting up those groups. Also, pushing your luck a little bit. How long do you stay in the round? How far do you want to risk, going for the herds of animals versus just taking a single animal? So much good stuff to say about this game. Even the production value is really good. These tiles are thick, they're durable, the artwork is beautiful on these. I like that they even put different artwork for the different numbers. It goes from like the baby animals up to the grown-ups, from 1 to 5 of each animal. So just little attention to detail there. All the arcs are slightly different. Those are really cool. Just the fact that they have these 3D arcs. I mean, sometimes I complain about gimmicky components, but I would argue in this case it works because this could have easily been a card game. But in this case, I think the gimmicky components actually add to the game and make it more functional. I love how these arcs hold the tiles perfectly in a row of 5 on top and 5 on bottom, so you can easily see when the game's about to end, when you're about to get that 10th tile. So a functional, gimmicky component I can get behind, especially when it looks this good and it really pops on the table like that, and it's not fiddly. So that will conclude today's episode. Which one of these 4 games do you want to try first? Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever played any of these? Let me know which one you like, which ones you've played. I love to read your comments and interact with you all, and I really appreciate you all liking, subscribing to my channel. This is the channel to be subscribed to learn about lesser known board games. That's my entire focus is, older games, maybe forgotten games, or games that just never got popular. So make sure you're subscribed, share this video, share my channel with your board gaming friends, and as long as my subscribers keep growing, I'm going to continue to put out videos like this. I really appreciate you all watching. If you want to support the channel any further, there is a donate link in the description. You can donate via PayPal, any amount you like, and that's not required. I don't expect it, but if you feel inclined, it is there in the description below. Also, make sure you check the description for any errors I might have made in my videos, little mistakes I might have made. I always put clarifications below in the description. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and we will see you on the next video.